welcome back to Educated Kids learning session. We have been discussing about the problem behavioral aspects of the social skill development. We talked about the antisocial or aggressiveness of the child. Since such behavior is very common in the preschool environment and among those children who are in the age group of 2 years to 6 years, then it becomes very important for all of us to understand them quite well and work appropriately to ensure that such problematic behavior among kids are taken care of. So in this connection, today we'll be discussing something which is related to a situation when children call others names. This is very common among children, and this happens when child feels little bit of insecure, and due to the negative exposure among peers who have been calling other names. So in today's session, we'll try to understand what are the aspects of the particular social problem related to child calling names, and we'll see that how we can manage them quite well. So first and foremost thing is that how to identify or what are the basic symptoms that a child can be coming under this category, which to some extent is considered to be the negative or problematic behavior. Number one is that very common when a child calls others by using derogatory words or derogatory sentence. For example, if a child is little bulky or fat and some other children start calling the child as fat, then this becomes a derogatory. Since it's a negative word, it becomes quite derogatory for the child who is concerned. And other such words like stupid, liar. So these are some of the words which are being used to address others are considered to be a situation when the child calls other by such derogatory words and by these names. So in this situation, we know things are bit difficult for the other children or the child who has been called by the names. This reduces self-confidence. This gives a feeling that they are useless. And when such things happen continuously in a given environment, then the child becomes a victim of all negativity, and the child himself or herself starts believing that he or she is useless, he or she is powerless. Such kind of behavioral patterns start building up. When such kind of perception builds up, then it becomes quite negative in the future, and that becomes quite detrimental in terms of its effect on the studies in the future or the quality of life in the future. Therefore, we must understand that, and we must, as parents and teachers, refrain those who are involved in such kind of negative social behavior. And people or the children who use this particular aspect of behavioral trait, those children are observed to get angry quite easily. Therefore, when a child is getting angry quite easily, and very quickly, then we may expect calling names is very common among such children. So before the child develops the habit of calling others by name, we must understand that if a child is getting angry very often, we try to manage that so that the child will not proceed further, start calling people by name. Third is when a particular child feels powerlessness, then the child just feels calling others by derogatory names will make him or her quite powerful. So this is a general perception, this is a general behavioral trait of the human nature, and that too happens among children very easily. So if a child feels powerlessness or the child remains separated, the child is not very inclusive or child is not very accommodative, then those are the symptoms of powerlessness. In that situation, development of such negative behavior which will lead to calling others by name is very common. So we must keep an eye when a child feels little bit of powerlessness or insecure for that matter. Then we have to really care for the child in order to avoid getting into such kind of negative social behavior. The next symptoms or next pattern can be that the child develops a perception that all people around are enemy to him or her. When child feels that somebody who is around is not very cooperative to him or her, then child feels that they may try to hurt him or her. If such kind of perception or such kind of beliefs develops, then child will try to protect himself or herself. And in that situation, child will try to protect by saying others by name. When child accepts such strategy of calling others by name, then child feels he or she is getting protected from the external negativity or external adversity. So such kind of situation we must be careful and ensure that any child at any particular point of time should not feel that his or her existence is being questioned or she or he is not been given that required attention or importance. So that is one of the common reason why such kind of negative behavior pattern surfaces. Finally, which is very important, and we must give some attention to such kind of situation where calling names becomes a common practice. There are homes, there are schools, there are various social gatherings when we call people names, and such kind of culture is accepted and people feel that it's very common to have such kind of environment or such kind of culture. But unfortunately, if a child is getting exposed to such kind of situation or such kind of environment, then child feels this is very common, this is very natural. Then child also starts developing such kind of behavioral traits. Then child gets some kind of input that if others are having little bit of demerit in terms of social status or demerit in terms of educational status, demerits in terms of other aspects of the society, then the children start calling those people by names. So it is very, very important that we must create an environment or a culture which will not be having any tolerance for calling others by name. So these are the few things we must keep it in mind when we are just having our monitoring system or giving some kind of attention or understanding a child's behavioral pattern before the child getting into that behavior of calling others by name. Then we are having some strategy how to handle such kind of situation. So there are few strategies which are really easy and quite practical to adopt, and let's see what are the things we can do in order to manage a child to go further developing this negative social behavioral trait as a regular habit and change that habit into a positive one. Number one, when a child is indulging in such kind of behavior, then it's very important that we must communicate with very specification that such behavior is not appropriate. And apart from communicating that behavioral patterns are not appropriate, we must take some action through reinforcement. So here reinforcement can be of two types. One could be positive reinforcement. Then in that case we are saying if the child will refrain from calling others names, then child will be getting rewarded. Then other one is that negative reinforcement. In that case, the child can be given some punishment if child is continuing with such habits. In that case, child knows what would be repercussions, so child will be refraining from calling people names. So it is the decision of the teachers and parents whether they are applying a positive reinforcement mechanism or they follow a negative reinforcement mechanism. So that varies or differs from case to case. So whatever is appropriate, based on that, some reinforcement mechanism must be in place. That is a good strategy. We must do such reinforcement as soon as possible. As soon as we observe such kind of behavior in the child, we must take that reinforcement. Second is that avoid an environment of name calling. As we have discussed that when a child sees some kind of name calling is a common practice, then child will also follow that same culture. And it is not fault from the child part that child is calling and we are just trying to correct the child without correcting that culture or environment of name calling where child is continuously getting exposed to. So whether it's school or at home, then we must ensure that name calling is strictly prohibited and those who are involved in this are getting necessary punishment for that purpose so that people will stay away from such kind of behavioral traits. Third one, what we can do is that avoid power struggle among the kids. So, as we have discussed, when a child feels that he or she is powerless, then they accept this strategy to call people names because they know they cannot win over others by other means. So it's very easy for them to call people names so that they try to show them inferior than to others or to from self. So in this case, there is a power struggle happens. So people try to call each other names so that power struggle goes on. So in that situation, we must teach children to remain calm and manage such kind of situation in a different way to have a common dialogue So to call others and say that they don't like calling by this name. So in such situation, amicably discussion would be one of the good strategy. In front of the teacher or parents would be a better option. Then culture of respectable opinion is very, very important. It is not like that people, they don't want to listen to others, or there must be a way that some kind of opinion can be placed. It is not like that always you call people names. So when people are calling names, so a culture of respectable opinion can be created, whether in school or at home. So such kind of situation is very, very important. So in a nutshell, reinforcement is very important, just to refrain the child calling other names, and ensuring that we do not have a culture or environment of calling names where the child is getting exposed. So these are the few things what we can do immediately in order to make a child remain away from such kind of negative social behavior. Now, as we have been always talking about, that a kind of documentation is important, maintaining that information when the child has been caught calling other names is important to be documented. So in that case, what we need to do, if we have some situations like the child often use derogatory words, the child is getting angry quite easily, or the child feels powerlessness, or the child feels that there is a hostile environment around. If such kind of things are happening with a particular child, we must keep them noted and ensure it is getting documented. So in that case, if child is exhibiting some kind of symptoms, or all the symptoms we discussed, then we keep it recorded. So for that matter of calculation of the intensity of such behavior, we give a score of 0 if such kind of situations are completely absent in the child. And if it often happens, that means very often child is exhibiting such kind of behavior by calling other names, we give a score of 3. Sometimes, maybe in few occasions, child is using such, then we give a score of 2. And very rarely, once maybe in a month or so, if child is having such kind of behavior, then we give a score of 1. So if we give such kind of scoring system in the checklist that we at Idevated Kids are providing, then that becomes very easy for the teachers and parents to track if child is getting into high intensity or very rare event of calling others by name. So such kind of evaluation can happen at least once in 6 months. And if you follow the syllabus for Idevated Kids, it has already been included to have this kind of checklist to be filled by the teachers and parents at least once in 6 months. So by doing this, we are sure that we could manage such negative behavior up to 90%. Rate 10% child will automatically understand by the time child will grow. But in order to avoid this becomes a habitual behavior, it's very important for all of us to understand this, identify this, and work on this. So this is a social problematic behavior. We have to be vigilant enough to mark such kind of behavior in our kids. Rest of the things will be very easy to manage. So that's all. And going further, in our next session, we'll be talking about another behavioral trait which includes that bullying and intimidating others, and that is also quite common among children in early childhood years, and we will be discussing in details on those things in our upcoming session. So thank you so much for your kind attention, and I'm sure this discussion and deliberation will give you little bit of better understanding about this negative social behavior and the ways to manage them. So thank you so much, and we'll meet you in our next session. Thank you so much.